We have to thank for that standard. It's the Kenneth Orrs of the world. It's the Charles Kynerts of the world. He's still living, and he's over here. And then we have these over here, starting with my dear friend Lori, and going around the Trey, the Marias, all of you, the Pools. And I thank you for that, because you set that standard of excellence. But our students are also very, very giving. You know, during the winter storm, we had students, and predominantly many from the Corps, that went to Reed Arena and were helping, as it was a warming center for those that were without electricity. We had students that volunteered, big event, which our daughter was very, very actively involved in, serving over 1,000, giving back as a service project to the community. And I always love sharing the story of what happened to our precious daughter when she was about 5 years old, diagnosed with a rare muscle disease that only affects about 1 out of 1,000,000 to 3,000,000 children, dermatomyositis. And Sherry and I had a very strong journey of our faith that year, because we sat in front of a pediatric neurologist at Scott and White Temple when they shared with us she may not make it because she had lost so much muscle mass. Now, I'll fast forward and say she went into remission, was on drill team. You would never know by seeing her today. But yet, I was walking in one day to my Management 105 Intro to Business class that I taught for about 26, 27 years, a class of about 463 students in that 8 o'clock class. And when I walked in, there was a young man walking in with me, and he said, "Doc, how was your weekend?" And I said, "Well, it was good. Every weekend's good. Our daughter is in Girl Scouts, and we went around the circle there in the neighborhood trying to sell Girl Scout cookies, and it seemed like everywhere we went, people had already bought theirs, but we're going to be back at it this week." And at the end of class, when I said, "Any announcements, anything we need to take care of?" that young man raised his hand, and I acknowledged him, and he stood up and he said, "I have a question. How many of us spend $2 or $3 on snacks every day and don't give it much thought?" And I immediately knew where he was headed in this conversation. And I put my hand up and I said, "We can't go there." He said, "You've already given me the floor." And he said, "I've just been made aware that our professor's daughter, and we all know that she's been battling a muscle disease, and she is in Girl Scouts and didn't have a lot of success this weekend selling Girl Scout cookies. My sister was in Girl Scouts. I know every brand there is, every make there is. If you want some, come see me after class." Well, that word spread to Chi Omega sorority, that spread to Squadron 17 that I worked with in the Corps. It spread to multiple student organizations. And all of a sudden, Sherry and I began to feel like we were Girl Scout distributors, because I was rolling this cart into the business school. And our building manager, who we think gave birth to that building, was like, "Ben, messing up the carpet." And I said, "Ed, it's okay, get over it." And so we're pulling all these Girl Scout cookies in. Rachel ended up being named into the Girl Scout Hall of Fame for the amount of Girl Scout cookies that she sold. And she received a call, did she not, from the national headquarters. And I mean, she's 5 years old, 6. And they are saying, "Could you explain to us your sales technique?" And you will love it, because her response was, "Yes, ma'am, it's the Aggie Network." And we know what that is, and we celebrate that. And to this day, we still relish the fact of how giving those students were sacrificially, of saying, "We love this young girl that we may have never met, because she's part of our extended family." And just like tonight, when we honor those and one of your classmates, that we say, "Do you know what? They gave much, and we are so proud of." But I tell you, we also celebrate what has not changed as involvement. Over 1,100 student organizations that students can plug into. And we are so, so proud. In fact, I wrote down one statement that the Washington Monthly named A&M amongst the best public universities for what they do for our country. And you think about our Silver Taps, our Ross Volunteers, all of those organizations. And I had the privilege for a couple of years to be director of student activities and was responsible for those organizations. And there are so many ways to get involved. And when I meet a student that says, "I'm trying to find my place," I don't know if it's in the Corps, I don't know if it's with student government, I don't know if it's with one of our Aggie clubs, hometown clubs, And just that joy of being able to visit with them. Now, I am privileged and have been for about 26 years to advise a Christian men's group on campus. And we had a formers retreat this past weekend, several hundred that came back. And in the past 26 years, I love seeing so many of them. Last Friday night, and one young man I went up to and I said, Justin, I believe you're an MD now. And I think you wanted to go into ER medicine. And he said, I'm back here, want to come back to College Station. He said, I'm doing emergency medicine at St. Joe's Hospital. And as I went around the room, another one that was a veterinarian, another one that was a pastor, and just seeing how they in turn are giving back, which we celebrate tonight for each person in this room. Those of you that were former students, your family members, we're all part of that family. But you know, one of the things that I love is our students, and I've already mentioned it. They're amiable, they're gifted, they're giving, they're involved. But we also see students that embrace enthusiasm. Now, my wife and I, when our daughter was born, now we love A&M. Sherry's brother graduated from engineering, his wife with an accounting degree, long history of Aggie connections. And in fact, her grandmother, who the Strong Cemetery, it's part of their family here in Rusk County, her grandmother but was at a 4-H camp or celebration in College Station, and her husband-to-be wrote her a note and asked if he could sit next to her on the bus as they drove back to East Texas. And so lots of wonderful connections. But with our sweet little daughter, when you look at enthusiasm, she was in kindergarten, and I got a call from Mrs. Skrbanek, her kindergarten teacher, and she said, Mr. Welch, I need to talk to you about Rachel. And I said, is everything okay? She said, as an Aggie, I have to tell you how proud I was, and you will be. She said, we introduce a color, and I know you do this every day with your kindergartners, all these things that you teach, Kaylee. But she said, today I encourage them next week to wear orange because we're in the month of October. And she said, getting close to Halloween, and she said for the very first time, sweet little Rachel Scarlett Welch raised her hand and said, Miss Skrbanek, I can't wear that color. And she said, I asked Rachel, well, why can't you wear that color? She said, that's a very bad color, Mrs. Skrbanek. And she said, that's a Texas color. And Miss Skrbanek said, you have brainwashed her so well. Well, it went back to when she was a baby. We had bibs that said, I spit up on Longhorns. And I'm sure we got a Longhorn out here, and we have a never-ending rivalry and competitiveness. But we have a mutual respect. I tell people that all the time. You get an incredible education there, but I'm glad that we all elected to go where we did, even over Baylor, Suzanne. That's okay. You just sit there and keep drinking your sweet tea. That when you think about that enthusiasm, you think about the excitement of yell practice. A young man that I'm particularly close to who was in Ag Men's Club, the Christian men's group I advised, he is our head yell leader this year, Keller Cox. And this summer, when you got to meet him, just a fine young man. And this summer, he wanted to do a Zoom call. And when we connected, the very first thing he said was, do you mind if we start with prayer over our time together? And I thought, where else than A&M do you see students that say to a faculty member, can we start our meeting in prayer? And I know we're not a Christian university, but it is a powerful influence there in that enthusiasm. And I get chills when I talk about this because that's what you set the path for us today that we still celebrate since 1876 and almost over 500,000 students that we call former students. But also our students are very self-directed. Many of you know this statistic that A&M has more CEOs, according to Fortune magazine, than any other university in the country. And that's something to celebrate, that these are CEOs, men and women that have charted that path to say, I'm going to achieve excellence. But what we're proud of is you don't have to be CEO. It may be that mom or that dad that stays home with those children, and that is the greatest investment that you can make in the lives of those children, of nurturing and mentoring them. Their job equally important to that of a CEO, that self-directed, those who say, this is the path that I want to chart. And even today, I got an email from a young lady who said, I've only met you one time, but I'm really struggling to just really chart my path beyond my senior year next year. I just need some guidance. That's what we do to help those students be self-directed, and we owe you that. When you think about our students are filled with passion, those of you that have been at a Yale practice, I mean, there is passion that goes on there. When you go to Aggie football, one of my closest friends who's Associate Athletic Director for Media Relations, I was texting with him this morning, and he said, we are so excited that we are back to full capacity at football this fall, and that passion that you feel, it is so contagious. And those of you that have been a part of Ring Day, and many of you that are former students have said, well, they didn't quite do all that when we were there. It is an affair. And I mean, you dress up, the families dress up. It is a very special, it's like doing an engagement. And is it not? It's, no, Lori, that's too many years ago, girl. You just sit there and drink your sweet tea, too. But when you think about, how many of you have been a part of a Ring Day, and have y'all been for one of those? Isn't it amazing? It is a celebration. And so that is that passion. And then I'll hear other people say, well, that wasn't so special where I went to school. We just went and picked the ring up and left, and glad we got it. Well, I can't tell you how many students will take 18 or 21 hours a semester just to have the privilege of ordering that ring. And then when we do ring checks, and everybody just counts as their ring. But our students, they're passionate. In fact, Squadron 17 that I advised for many years in the Corps, they gave me my Aggie ring on a parents' weekend, one of the most meaningful times that I've ever experienced because of that passion that we feel. Sherry and I had them as part of our wedding, had the saber arch. I mean, there is incredible passion. But one of the things that we love amongst our students is their level of integrity. Those young men and women, now, we have our 2%ers out of our 70,000. We're going to have those that will not be engaged in academic dishonesty. I sit on the Academic Appeals Hearing Committee, one of 4 faculty for the university that hears cases. If a student has been charged with academic dishonesty, goes before that board, and they feel like that was unmerited, the sanction they were given, they have one opportunity to appeal. And probably about 95% of the cases, we uphold that sanction. But at the end of every one of those, I ask to speak to that student that we're visiting with. And I say to them, I hope you know when you are afforded the opportunity to come back after your suspension, that you should take with the greatest sense of pride what it means to be an Aggie. And when you walk that stage one day and you're a part of our former students and you represent the finest university, and when we say Aggies don't lie, cheat, or steal, we hold that standard for you, and that's what we expect. You've disappointed me, you've disappointed your family, you've disappointed our Aggie family. But my God's a God of second chances, and we're giving you one. And you may be on suspension for 1 semester, 2 semesters, but when you come back, I want you to have the greatest sense of Aggie pride and uphold one of our core values, and that being integrity. Where did we learn that from? Each of you former students that we celebrate tonight, because your level of integrity, when I met Matt, when I met Trey, so many of you, your integrity and the way that you run the bank, when I meet people through my church, the educators, those in construction, those like Jeff that have such an impact with so many ministries, what I say about each of you is you are men and women of integrity. And I tell everyone that asks me, why Henderson, Texas? Why Rusk County? I said it's the best decision we've ever made in our life because the people are loving, they're caring, and they are filled with integrity, and they truly know what it means to be a part of family. But one of the things that we also celebrate tonight, just a couple of last things, is respect. When I was director of student activities, that was when we had our bonfire tragedy. And those of you that have been a part of Rusk County vividly remember one of Henderson's own with Jamie Hand. That was one of our 12 victims. When I was at the university, and that was a day I'll never forget, getting a call from the emergency response team. I went to the university, and it was just a somber atmosphere. That night, I was at St. Joseph's Hospital, and I was trying to console Mrs. Adams. Her daughter, Miranda, a student in my class, took an exam the morning before, never realizing as a freshman that would be her last exam to take, and just graduated months before from Santa Fe High School. And as I was trying to console her, there was a man that walked into the ER area they had given us, and he didn't look like anybody in this room. And one of the things that I value in my faith is I should never judge by an outward appearance. But as this man walked in, I thought, you don't belong with our Aggie family. He was about 5 times my size. He had a Harley helmet under one arm, bandana, sweating profusely, tattoos from his neck down. None of that bothered me as much as what I saw in his hand, and it was a purple bag. And I thought to myself, how could you make a mockery of a time such as this by bringing alcohol into this room when we are now grieving the loss of our 12th student, of our A&M family? He made eye contact with me. He approached me and he said, "Sir, are you at the university?" And I said, "Yes, sir." And he said, what do you do there?" And I admit, I was getting irritated, thinking this is not a time to forge a conversation, but out of respect, I said, "Well, I work in student affairs and I teach at a business school." And he said, "Well, I have something I want to give to you." And how many times do we judge which goes against our values as Aggies? And what I thought was a bottle of alcohol. He put that bag on the counter, and I heard coins in that bag. And he said, "I only make minimum wage here in Bryan. And every time for the past 3 years I've made a purchase, I've saved the change for an emergency, such as tonight." And he said, "Sir, if you've got a young man that's hungry, would you just share enough coins he could get some crackers and some chips? Young lady, if she's thirsty, enough coins to get a bottle of water, perhaps a soft drink." And I looked at him and I said, "Sir, I am so touched by your kindness. Can I get your name and address to send you a thank you note on behalf of our university family?" And he looked down and he saw my A&M ring, again given to me by students that had held car washes and so many fundraisers to present this to me. And he looked down and he said, "Sir, I'll never be smart enough to wear one of those rings, but I can still show my respect for those students and families that are hurting today." And what a lesson in respect. And I looked up today what the UT student body vice president wrote that night. And many of you have heard this, but it touches me every time. Eric, who was the University of Texas student body vice president, said, "That night at Bonfire, I had the great privilege of attending the memorial service at A&M tonight and was deeply moved by the events that I experienced. The A&M student body is truly one of the greatest treasures of our state. As part of the UT delegation, we sat on the floor of Reed Arena, and immediately following the end of the service, I heard this rustling sound behind me. I looked over my shoulder and saw the sight of close to 20,000 students spontaneously putting their arms on their neighbors' shoulders, forming a great circle around the arena. The mass stood there in a pin-drop silence for close to 5 minutes, and then from somewhere, someone began to quietly sing, "Amazing grace, how sweet that sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. When we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, we've no less days to sing God's praise than when we first begun. And within seconds, the whole arena was singing. I tried to, but I choked and I cried. This event brought me to tears. It was one, if not the defining moment of my college career. I learned something tonight. All of us Longhorns that discount A&M and our never-ending rivalry, we need to realize one thing. Aggie Land is a special place with special people. It is infinitely better equipped than us at dealing with a tragedy such as this for one simple reason. A&M is a family. It's a family that cares for its own, a family that reaches out, a family that is unified in the face of adversity, a family that moved this Longhorn to tears. My heart, my prayers, and the heart of the UT student body go out tonight to Aggies and their family and friends as they recover from this terrible loss. Texas A&M, the eyes of Texas are upon you, and they look with sincere sympathy upon a family that has been through so much tragedy this semester. And how beautiful. Every time I read that, I get chills, because that's the influence that those that we honor tonight had. Those from another university, competitor, can come and be brought to tears, knowing that A&M is about family. And every one of you that I've met tonight that's part of our A&M family, which is every one of you in some fashion, whether it's extended family or immediate former student or student to be, that's what we are. We celebrate that, and it is that respect that we have. And those of you that knew Jamie from Henderson and loved her, perhaps educators that taught her, knowing that her spirit remains forever because of what we celebrate as part of Aggie Muster. And the last thing that we still have at our university is a very tenacious spirit. No, there was one quote that I wrote down by Secretary E.E. McQuillan, class of 1920, and he said in 1923, the size of the muster is not important. The spirit that brings Aggies together this one night of the year is the vital element. Because we're tenacious, we're not easily pulled apart. A number of years ago, I had the privilege of teaching a young man in an honors junior course, management course. And Toby was our student body president, and right after graduation, he was rafting down the Guadalupe River with some of his buddies, and he capsized into the water and hit a rock and had paralysis from his neck down. And my wife and I drove to San Antonio because he was in ICU, and there were just seemingly hundreds of students gathered there at the hospital. And when I introduced who I was and asked if I could sing, they allowed me in there. And as I walked in and I saw him in this ER getting ready to go into intensive care, he was smiling. And I said, Toby, I said, man, how could you be smiling at a time like this when you've been told that you will most likely never walk again? And he said, Doc, he said, a lot of things can be taken from me. He said, I may never walk again, but nobody can take my Aggie spirit from me. And he ended up being our Aggie Muster speaker several years ago. He was on crutches, but he has learned to walk, very little mobility, but he went on to law school. He said, I believe in doing the best that I can do. And if you look at what I've shared tonight, our students are amiable. We get from you. They're gifted. They're giving. They're involved. They're enthusiastic. If you look at the first letter of those words, the words amiable, gifted, giving, involved, and enthusiastic, the letters A-G-G-I-E. And you look tonight as we celebrate that our sons and daughters, those that have gone before you, those that we celebrate tonight, they were self-directed, they were passionate, they were men and women filled with integrity. They had respect that has become one of our core values, and they are filled with tenacity. And it's because of that impact that they've had. So they're self-directed, they're passionate, they're filled with integrity, they're respectful, but they impact those around us. Not just an impression, but they impact. And lastly, that tenacity. So if you look at self-directed, passion, you look at integrity, respect, impact, tenacious, those first letters are the letters S-P-I-R-I-T. And if you look at those combination of characteristics that we celebrate and are still an integral part of A&M, amiable, gifted, giving, they're involved, and they're enthusiastic. First letters, A-G-G-I-E. You look at what we celebrate tonight, and we have each of you to thank for your families. Self-directed, passionate, integrity, respect, impact, and tenacity. Those first letters, S-P-I-R-I-T, Aggie Spirit. And that's what we celebrate tonight, whether we knew your loved one or not. Tonight, as we answer here to that roll call, we celebrate a spirit that can never be told. A spirit that one day I know when God calls me home, that is an Aggie muster. And I can't even say this without tearing up in Henderson, Texas, because this is now home to us, that when Ben Welch's name is called, that there will be those of you in this room that will answer here. And there is no greater joy than knowing that at over 400 locations tonight, that there are those that are answering yes, that spirit shall remain forever. And I thank you for allowing us the privilege, me and Sherry, of being able to call Henderson home, and for every one of you that have made us feel an extended part and now an integral part of your Aggie family. Thank you, and God bless.